right. Well, y'all, welcome back to the Healthy Sex Podcast. We are here with an incredible woman, Miss Emily Griffith of CrossFit Brigade. Emily, it's awesome to have you today.
Thank you so much, Marissa.
Yes,
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. It's a delight to, I've personally have been getting to know Emily the last few months at her gym, her CrossFit space. Emily is an incredible advocate for health and wellness in the community. She's got a beautiful storyline of her own she's going to share a little bit about today. And she's got a beautiful thing going over at CrossFit Brigade. She's genuinely very passionate and cares about her athletes and your clients, and that just means a lot to me as a CrossFit person myself. So we're glad you're here.
Thank you again for having me. Feels like women empowering women here.
Absolutely.
Love
yeah.
it.
So y'all, a little bit about Miss Emily. She has a history with athletics. She was a competitive CrossFit athlete. She owns a health and wellness company with her husband. Is that right?
Health coaching.
Health coaching.
Mm-hmm.
She is co-owner of CrossFit Brigade. Mm-hmm. One of the many, many fascinating things she's a part of. So entrepreneur, athlete, mama, wife, awesome Christian woman. Yeah, girl, you got a few things going on. So yeah, Miss Emily, I'd love it if we could, just because I think our listeners genuinely like to know about the guests, could you tell us a little bit about your background with health and fitness and how you ended up in the CrossFit space?
Yes. I actually didn't, I'm 46, almost 47 years old.
Okay.
And I've been doing CrossFit since, for about 16 years, I think, since I was 31.
Okay.
My daughter was 18 months old when I first tried it.
Amazing.
I was athletic as a child,
Mm-hmm.
but I really spent my 20s in corporate America and doing a lot of happy hours and kind of like living more towards leaning into a very unhealthy patterns
Yeah.
with, you know, the lifestyle was in there.
Okay.
And so when my husband and I found, it was a CrossFit gym here in Chattanooga, we went to, and it just gradually kind of transformed what our trajectory, basically, once we got in. And actually it was really the CrossFit competitions I attended, a couple of like in Atlanta. Atlanta was like a mecca for CrossFit with a couple hundred gyms in Atlanta at that time, around 2011. And once we got there, it was like I found my people, and you know, so my circles shifted to people that were really passionate about going to these CrossFit competitions, as opposed to you know, what band was playing at a different bar for the weekend.
Got it.
So it was a good shift for me.
Yeah. You've shared a little bit about your testimony in the gym space in our women's group, and that's been really fascinating. How I think your background, you said, was in Taekwondo and soccer.
Growing up.
Yeah, which is awesome. And then I think you mentioned, like you said, in your 20s, you were headed down a road that just wasn't super healthy.
Yes.
And the CrossFit space and that community functional fitness really was a pretty powerful transformation for you and your husband.
Very much so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There was definitely unhealthy alcohol and substance patterns that were, you know, becoming an issue. So it was kind of CrossFit and Jesus that straightened me out. I mean, but Jesus used CrossFit to get a hold of me, thankfully.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I love that you're here today. This is, like Clint shared earlier, this is episode 20. And you know, the Healthy Sex Podcast I share in the intro, it's about all facets of being healthy, right? Physically, mentally, spiritually, sexually, relationally, emotionally. You are actually the first guest I've had on that actually is a health and fitness expert, if you will. So I'd love if we could talk a little bit today about just the overall benefits of health and exercise for people. I know with my sex therapy clients, etc., I talk about the benefits, but I think it's good for the listeners to hear, like, you know, what is it about health and community and exercise that is actually worthwhile in considering in the new year?
Yeah, I think the whole person approach is just so important. And we've leaned into that much more in the last few years because since the pandemic, you know, sedentarism is up. And so even people that were coming into the CrossFit gym, if we're not addressing their sleep, stress, and nutrition holistically alongside the fitness piece, then it's a struggle. So the community aspect has been really interesting, just also because loneliness and isolation has gone up so much.
Yeah.
And so in a gym like ours, I think the need is greater than ever for spaces where people will come in, put their phones down, make eye contact with people, maybe even high five or fist bump, because I know that there's currently sadly a lot of people in our world that are going days without human contact.
Yep.
If they're working from home,
For sure.
It's
the social isolation probably is at an all-time high, especially
Yes.
post-pandemic, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I even caught some moms that were coming in because all of a sudden they had their spouses working from home.
Uh-huh.
And they were like, oh my gosh, I've got to get out of here. I cannot be here with my whole family all the time.
I need a break.
It's been very interesting to see the ways that people's life flow and stuff has changed and how that's impacted things.
Yeah.
So we've definitely seen people that need to get out of the house, come in just to have a space that they can go communally and, get out for a bit. And then we also saw a change from downtown shifting where people are not coming into work as much.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that history as far as like maybe your gym history. When you say downtown, most people aren't going to understand that context.
Well, we opened pretty close to the downtown area. And so a lot of our folks were people that may be coming off of Signal or Lookout to go to work at some of the big businesses like the Blue Crosses and Unums and TVAs. And so once they went work from home, it kind of kept extending. And so I think a lot of the downtown barbershops and restaurants and gyms are getting a lot less frequented because there is not so much activity down there.
That makes sense.
So it's been quite the phenomenon. And then we have people that come through. I mean, we have people that are doing van life that'll pop in for 3 months or 6 months. And
van life? Is that like literally like, nomadic?
Yes.
Okay.
We meet a lot of traveling people that might be here for a month and they might stick around for 6 months or a year. It's so different than it was before 2020.
That is, yeah. I know you and I met for the first time in person, like when Optimize You had an open house maybe over a year ago.
Yes.
And you were talking about, or we were talking about, because we both came out of the CrossFit space, how CrossFit in general has shifted. It used to be, kind of almost cult-like, kind of crazy hype, like adrenaline seeking. And we were talking about how trying to reach clients has had to shift because so many people crashed out in their nervous system after the pandemic. Like everyone was in fight or flight, very anxious, like financial stress, life and death stress, all sorts of social trauma, and just kind of the nervous system crash out, like people kind of like shutting down, not as motivated, more insulin resistance, kind of psychologically like bleh, right?
Oh yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to that and how you've been able to try and get people back online?
Yes, the approach used to probably be a little bit more geared towards like, let's try to get a PR, personal best, every week that we're in there. And the last 3 or 4 years, it's show up, move, take what you need today. If you need to go sit in the corner on the bike. And we definitely have adjusted. Also, I mean, there's a whole history with the sport of fitness and sport of CrossFit stuff. And we're definitely more focused on longevity and vitality with our athletes and our clients now. But yeah, they just come in different now than before, I would say.
And by that, do you mean like their motivation for being there is different or their goals are different? Is
yes.
That kind of, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It's really just like for most people, it's just come in and move now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know you prepared an amazing amount of information, so I would love to follow your lead in terms of what you want the listeners to hear about major bullet points that they can take away from why they should consider prioritizing health and wellness for the new year. I know we're in January, and so I was talking with somebody the other day, it's kind of in January, we're still hibernating. So to start a New Year's resolution in January feels like counterintuitive. But as spring approaches, I don't know if you want to share a little bit about stats as far as like, weight concerns, obesity concerns, etc. And then we can kind of talk about how that could impact the sexual facet for people and their well-being. If you want to start there.
Yeah, sure. So obesity has definitely been on the rise. It has so much to do with our nutrition and sedentarism, of course. So I think just combating that, taking an overall lifestyle approach is really important. And so people always ask, like, what's the best workout? It's just like reading the Bible. Which one's the best? It's the one that you will read. It's the one that you will do.
Okay.
So just finding what's right for you. And I think it really depends on your season of life. And we talk about this a lot in our women's program. We have for like women that are typically going to be about 35 or above, have started coming into my women's functional strength class. Okay. They're wanting to some of them have done CrossFit as you had before. And so they didn't want to come in and get super stimulated.
Right.
But they know that they need that strength piece.
Okay.
So, I think it's different for different seasons of life, like whether you want to be training outside more, or if you have a new baby, you see that a lot. People need to work out at home. So I think it's whatever you can do to get a routine going.
Okay.
I often just share with people, typically if I have a meeting with anyone I have a meeting with, I always want to know how many steps a day they're getting.
Okay.
That tells me so much right up front about their lifestyle. And
can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah,
That would be interesting to hear.
The average American is getting less than 4,000.
Okay.
And mortality rates, just as an example, go up tremendously when you get 8,000 or more.
Okay.
So
as in life expectancy increases.
Your health span, your lifespan
if you're walking
are going to
more.
be a lot better.
Okay.
Basically, yeah. And same thing with grip strength. Grip strength is a big indicator of these things.
As in like holding something. Grip strength. Okay. Okay.
How hard is it for you to get up off the floor unassisted? These are things that even working with, I do a wide range of ages. I work from probably 8 years old till I have a 79-year-old client as well.
Okay.
And everything in between. And even when I've worked with, like, an example would be my middle school boys class.
Okay.
Not very good at getting up off the ground without using a lot of assistance, because people want to use the path of least resistance. But recognizing, like, actually it's going to be better for me just to get up on my own and not use things even though they're right beside me.
Okay.
So these things will help us to have better kind of like range of motion in our joints, strength, core mobility, and all these things that are just kind of natural movement patterns.
Okay.
But we're getting way too comfortable.
And you're saying Americans are?
Yes.
Okay.
Staying in like 70-degree temperature all the time.
Okay.
And, being as comfortable as possible in a chair or on a couch or in the bed for way too many hours.
Okay.
So it's not just that walking is good for you. It's that sitting too much is really, really bad for you.
Oh, okay. So if people come in, or something that you assess for is how often are you sitting? How long do you sit? How much are you getting up and moving during the day? Are you picking things up? Are you able to move? Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm looking for overall, like how many steps a day we're getting. And if I can get people thinking about trying to get a little bit more gradually over time, everything starts doing better, because just walking more is good for stress management, to clear the mind, being outside, joints. It's good for digestion. It's good to do after a walk. Just learning so much about how beneficial it is. So, and that's really the one that is the easiest. You don't have to have a gym. There's very low barrier for that. So that's like my number one.
Is
even
getting people to walk?
Yes. Okay. And even if I have like a high level athlete, you get high level athletes that will deadlift really heavy and hit some hard intense workouts and then go sit for 10 hours.
Yes.
And
guilty.
that is rough on your body.
Yes. I will share, when I started your women's group this fall, you were like, how many steps are you getting? I was like, I don't know. And I sit all the time, right? I mean, I sit hour after hour, pack my days full of therapy clients. And by the end of the day, I've gotten like 1,000 steps or less. I mean, that's insane. And I know I personally started putting on a ton of weight. And that's been one of my goals in coming to see you, is just being more intentional about movement, like more aware of it, more mindful. And that's been a game changer, just in like helping shift body composition and burning fat. But the walking thing, just to bring it around full circle for couples, like that's something I'll prescribe for couples, is at the end of the day or before you come in and the kids are going crazy, if you can somehow meet up in the driveway, go for a loop or two around the neighborhood, it's a great time for bonding. You're moving, your brain's, you're kind of getting the stress out of your body. And then big picture, as far as sexual function, I think most of us are forgetful that good sex is like a cardiovascular event. And so if we're sitting all day long and then our partner's like, hey, do you think maybe you wanna, right? It's like, I don't know, my brain's like kind of still offline and the rest of my body's like not moving much, so not really. So
don't use that for your exercise for the day.
Yeah,
you can.
Yes, you could. But I think you're right. So many of us as Americans are just sitting, and I don't think we realize how much that translates over into lack of stimulation in our love life. So I love that you're just starting with people wherever they're willing to meet you, or you're trying to meet them where they're at and just say, let's just start moving. right?
Yeah. Sometimes having hard conversations with people, walking is a great place to do that too.
Yeah.
Because you're not like
Yeah.
looking each other in the face and just,
Sure.
it just takes a lot of the pressure out, I think, to
Yeah.
get in the car or take a walk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I noticed, my daughter had a couple of surgeries a couple years ago
Mm-hmm.
and, really witnessing kind of like this, she couldn't do very much at all for weeks, and it just affected her so much, and the sedentarism, and you could even see like a puffiness forming,
Sure.
and it, you know, the lymphatic system isn't getting flushed out at all.
Sure.
So I'm really big on keeping people moving through injuries and things like that as well.
How many steps a day are we supposed to get? Do you know that?
Well, there's a lot of debate, but
Okay.
I mean, I think 10 is a
10?
minimum.
10,000?
Minimum. Yeah.
10,000?
Yes.
How many, do you know, is that like 2
I
miles?
have a friend
3
that
miles?
says 14. So I think 10 is 5 miles.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm not doing that. Okay. I am not doing that.
I think
Okay.
just starting by adding, you know, trying to get 1,000 or 2,000 more a day is a good place to start. And then it does become a little bit like, once you feel better because you do it for a week, then you start to want to do it more.
Okay.
So that's what I found. I went back to going to the grocery store. I was ordering my groceries, and then my son likes to grocery shop with me. So now I get at least 1,000 or 2,000 more when I go with him.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, well, we'll go pick out food, and he eats better if he is involved in picking the food out.
Love it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, getting back to things like that, I think can be good for people.
Okay. Speaking of food, let's share about how, in your experience and training and education, how important, like how much, if there's a percentage of the pie, the healthy pie, as
Yes.
far as somebody's health and wellness, how much is our food intake and our nutrition? Like how important is that?
Well, for body composition,
Yeah.
people say like 80%
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I tend to, my opinion is that sometimes movement is the catalyst or the linchpin to get people to want to make that good choice, because when you start to have a good workout, it's way more exciting than like, yeah, I just hammered some broccoli and fish. I feel so awesome about myself. But you know, you hit a
Okay.
good lift and
Yeah.
you're excited and you want to keep the motivation going. So I think the endorphins give you a little bit more like pep in your step to think, okay, I'm going to go home and make this recipe that where, you know, everyone's recommending for good health. So
Okay.
those type of things. And then, I mean, the more I'm learning about the gut health situation, I mean, just thinking about sexual function, like if your gut is not pleasant, if you're eating a lot of highly processed foods,
Okay.
I would imagine that would be very uncomfortable to
Sure.
put yourself through. So I think that's a factor for sure. But
Okay.
overall, like the links between highly processed food and sugars and depression and anxiety
Oh, really?
are astronomical. Like I
Really?
just
Okay.
discovered,
Okay.
I mean, it makes sense to me,
Sure.
but in the last year, as I've researched more of that side of things, it is alarming. Like
The links between highly processed food and anxiety and depression.
Yes.
So can you give our listeners a few examples of what highly processed foods would be? Because I think it's so inundated in our culture. Most of us don't even recognize those anymore.
No. So a lot of the packaged foods, I mean, I think about like a Kraft macaroni and cheese box or something.
Okay.
A lot of the, even like the stuff that appears healthy, like yogurts, that are going to have a lot of added sugars.
Okay.
Added sugars is kind of my trick that I tell people to keep an eye out for.
Okay.
And then anything with a lot of ingredients that you don't know of. I think there's at least 40 different names for different types of sugars and fillers
Okay.
and things that are put into
Okay.
different packaged foods. But it's a lot of the big, you know, the Kellogg's and the a lot of the big brand names.
Okay.
That's a whole political discussion
Sure.
we won't get into today.
Sure. But food that's been stripped of like its natural state.
Food that I would not describe as food. It's
Heard.
just really
Okay.
highly processed edible
Okay.
items. And
Yeah.
it's like Las Vegas in your mouth. It's salty and sweet. And it's really
Las
hard.
Vegas in your
That's
mouth.
what we call
I
it
love
at
it.
my house.
I love
But
it.
I think
All the dopamine.
the serotonin, even this week I was listening to something that says you have 3 to 5 times the number of serotonin receptors in your gut.
Yep.
As opposed to your brain.
Yeah. 90% of serotonin is made in the gut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and you would do a better job of explaining to your listeners
yeah.
what that hormone.
Yeah. So that's a neurotransmitter that is basically everyone's men and women. It's our happy neurotransmitter. Yeah. So to your point, if our gut is not healthy, the majority of our happy neurotransmitter production is going to suffer, which would play into the anxiety and the depression. So that's like IBS, right? Sometimes it's like celiacs or ulcerative colitis. It's like it can manifest in all sorts of ways, but if 90% of our gut biome produces our happy neurotransmitter and we're not taking care of our gut biome, yes, even after antibiotics, like this time of year, everyone's getting sick. So like it wipes out that natural flora. So people will be more prone towards anxiety and depression after rounds of antibiotics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't know that.
And eating the sugars releases serotonin. So it's addictive in that way because it's making you happy for that moment.
Okay.
Is my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, the majority of our overall health and wellness is actually our food intake. And then 20% of it is movement. Is that right?
I would say if we're talking about body composition.
Okay, now will you tell the listeners what that means? What do you mean by body composition?
Body composition would be we look at kind of our percentage of body fat and then how much skeletal muscle mass one has. Okay. So, looking lean or, having
more muscle than fat or more fat than muscle?
Yeah. Yep.
Like how a body is composed? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, one of the indicators that you don't really need a lot of science for is just like your waist to hip ratio. That's a really important one for everyone. Okay. So you always want your waist to be smaller than your hips. That's a sign of good health.
Okay.
And
that's good.
You're going to have a better lifespan and a better health span as long as you keep it that way.
Cheers. We're going to keep walking and doing the stairs.
These are just little rules of thumb, but they are meaningful. Yeah.
Okay.
It will tell you a lot about your overall health.
Okay. Okay. So the body composition piece, I don't think I think you and I talked about this in the gym earlier, and you can correct me. I think I've heard recently that 42% of America is considered obese, which is 50 pounds overweight. Is that right? Obesity?
I don't know the metric on that.
Okay.
But I think it's growing at a rapid rate.
Yeah. And then over 60% is just overweight. So almost half.
I was going to say, I heard 60. So that makes sense.
Okay. Yep. So 42% of Americans are struggling with obesity. And that gets into like the PCOS, insulin resistance, diabetic stuff. For the listeners, this matters for sexual function, right? So penises are very vascular. A vulva is very vascular. Our genitals are supposed to be very vascular. So if we're having issues with our cardiovascular system and blood flow and nerves and neuropathy, long term, this is really going to impact sexual function. So that's another thing I think I just really want listeners to hear from today's podcast is this is, like you were saying earlier, this is long-term longevity and quality of life.
Yes.
Right? So if I'm overweight, it's not only going to impact my immediate physicality with my partner, but it's also going to impact long-term like blood flow, cardiovascular health, brain health, genital health.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell what the 10 general physical skills are considered because I had that on my mind as we were preparing for the podcast.
Awesome.
And I thought, well, we can let listeners just use their imagination on how these could come into play for good sexual health. Okay. You just mentioned it. Cardiovascular, respiratory endurance. We train for stamina. Okay. Strength, flexibility. Okay. Speed, power, coordination, agility, balance, and accuracy.
Okay, we're going to have to slow down and go through that one more time. So these are the 10, you said?
General physical skills in CrossFit.
In CrossFit. Okay.
Yeah. So the methodology focuses on, getting more well-rounded at all of these things. And so I just, as I reviewed the list again with this conversation in mind, I thought, well, that's kind of fun.
Yeah. So the first one you said is cardiovascular and respiratory
endurance.
So I do have some couples that have come in and said, hey, like our desire's coming back, but we don't have the stamina. Wow. Like we don't have the stamina to have the kind of sex we want to have. So we realized we need to get back in the gym or we're starting to work out together again. So that's kind of a fun, positive feedback loop is, hey, we want to have longer sex, more meaningful sex, more connective sex, more physical sex. And so they're recognizing, wow, stamina matters. Yes. Yes.
And the mind-body connection, I think, comes into play there too. Breath work, that kind of stuff.
Okay. What was the next one?
Stamina.
Stamina.
The ability to repeatedly perform a movement at a high intensity.
Yes.
Has a whole different
Love
feel
it.
now that we're on the
Healthy Sex
the
podcast.
Healthy Sex podcast.
Well, cheers. That matters. Okay.
Strength, the ability to exert force.
Cheers. Yep. So that matters. So let's bring that in. This sounds fun and goofy.
Flexibility.
Yep. So this gets into like different positions.
Sure.
So some of my couples I work with get frustrated that they can only do one or two positions. They get bored. Hey, they want to try and do something different, but maybe one or both of them can't hold themselves up or hold certain body parts, maintain certain positions. So I think that totally matters.
Yeah, I had a couple. Actually, she does a lot of the shows now. That, but anyway, probably 10 years ago, we were doing a nutrition challenge, and the husband decided to write a blog about the whole thing, and it was called a primal challenge.
Okay.
And so we allowed for the exercise points, they would earn points. We kind of gamify things in my world. And for the exercise points, we would allow, any physical activity, including sex, which they were like, that's completely unfair. We're a couple. We're going to win this challenge.
Hilarious.
So they were getting a lot more points than everyone else, but they were very excited because they had transformed kind of their body composition, and they were feeling much more just sexy, I guess.
Okay.
And they would share, like, he was like, well, I can pick her up now. It's great. She was like, I love being picked up now.
I love it.
It was really cute. They're adorable.
Cute.
Yeah.
It is cute. Yeah, but that's the fun stuff that couples want to be able to enjoy.
Yes.
Yeah. So I love that.
It definitely changed. Oh, and they had a great story about, I remember when they first would come in and they'd say, we thought it was kind of expensive at first. And then we realized we just want to be here in the evenings, and we cut off our cable and we don't go to the bar anymore. And now we're actually spending a lot less money because we're here at the gym every night.
I love it.
Together. So
yes.
it was really cool.
That's very cool.
So then you've got speed.
Okay.
The ability to move quickly, if you only have a little bit of time.
Cheers.
Power, the ability to exert force quickly. Coordination, work different parts of the body together.
Love it.
Agility is the ability to transition between movement patterns quickly.
Love it.
Balance, control the placement of the body's center of gravity. And then accuracy, control movement in a given direction at a given intensity. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I wish I don't know if it's going to sound tacky or not, but I'm going to say it because it's my podcast. I wish we could somehow, in a not creepy way, do like a poll and have like CrossFit gyms or certain types of gyms do like a comparative thing about like who's having the most sex. Because I remember when I used to coach, it just seemed like the CrossFit gyms, they have like droves of babies. There's a lot of reproduction. So it's like
very fertile.
Yeah, very fertile. Like
very
high
fertile.
testosterone, cardiovascular health. They're bonding in the community. Adrenaline is bonding. I know the stats say that couples that are active together report feeling more closely connected than couples that are sedentary.
Yes.
So movement is, that high intensity can be very bonding for people. But I just have always like, in observing, I'm like, I wonder, not in a weird way, but just a curious way. Like, I wonder comparatively, the love life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also have very happy babies.
Oh.
Yep.
Really?
Yep. The endorphins transfer.
Do they really?
In our utero. Yes.
Oh, cool.
So one little baby that people come in, and even today they were like, I've just never seen a baby this happy. And I'm like, his mom was walking on her hands the day she gave birth.
My goodness.
Like, literally.
One of your athletes was? Okay.
And I did the same with Bodhi, and he's such a good natured child.
Wow. So you've seen that firsthand.
Yes.
Like
we had 9 pregnancies when I was pregnant with Bodhi. There were 9 of us, and I think we had probably 150 members. So that's a large percentage of people that were pregnant.
That's awesome.
At the gym at the same time. But yeah.
So the psychology of the infants, just according to mama's health, you've seen that really translate. Okay.
Yeah.
Miss Emily, I know you want to talk a little bit about the psychology piece. I don't know if we've touched on that, but kind of the one of the reasons why I think both you and I love the CrossFit space, and not like in a cult way, but just like the community piece.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit about like the benefits of just being in a community fitness space and how that benefits us with psychology? And
yeah, I would love to.
Okay.
It's really very, very personal for me. It fills my cup every day to go in and just see my clients. I think we're more facilitating a lot of relationships. People coming in, happy to see each other, very different walks of life. We have people that have become best friends. They'll be groomsmen in each other's weddings.
Oh.
Romances, marriages, people that will do trivia nights together. They just come up with fun ways to hang out. And then also like people finding professional mentors in our gym. So there's just a lot of people begin to trust each other, I think.
Yeah.
There's something about the way the workouts are formatted, as you know, that first of all, it's good for your brain neuroplasticity. There's definitely the mind-body connection, but the way that we're doing over 200 different movements, you know, in a CrossFit gym. And I read that at least a decade ago. So I know we've added to that.
You're saying in general?
Just in our gym.
Like if I'm regularly participating, there are all sorts of movements.
Hundreds of different movements we'll do. And then, I mean, they all come down to the same basics, like pushing, pulling, hinging, squatting. Okay. But a lot of variety. And then the way the workouts are formatted, you know, there's a lot of like friendly competition. There's a lot of sharing in other people's triumphs. You know, you might come in kind of having a tough morning, but then your friend is like, we had a girl walk in today. She's had a rotator cuff surgery. We hadn't seen her in a few weeks, and it just lit up everyone's day to get to see her. And so, you know, she's someone I really only see at the gym, but it's just a really neat, really welcoming, really supportive and encouraging group of people. And you can typically expect that they're going to be pointing you towards health and not, you know, pointing you the other way. And then I think it's important to have those relationships if you're in, you know, a romantic relationship, having those outside relationships that you can come home and you've got a friend at the gym that you maybe share with, and you've got, because those different types of relationships are really important. And I think they're really lost on a lot of people these days with all the work from home. And it's just something that it seems like people are struggling with eye contact a lot more these days. Things, just little things like little social cues. But in our gym, typically 90% of people are going to not have their phones out for an hour. And it's probably the only hour of the day, I would guess, that
unless they're in therapy.
And you haven't put it away too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I thought about that a couple weeks ago.
And how much are they twitching and stuff?
Yeah. I'm like, punch your Apple Watch in the face. It's going to be okay. You're going to be all right. But you're right. I mean, like if we're in isolation, we're sedentary, and we're distracted by screens, there really aren't that many spaces anymore in our culture that are set up like a community fitness space where you're going to have to set all of that down, be present, show up, be human, be relational, move, encourage, be a teammate. Right.
Well said.
Yeah.
I need you to do a commercial.
Okay. But really, that's what most of us are made for. Like from a faith perspective, that's original design, like tribe. Yes. Right. Like that's where that whole like community, we're doing physical tasks together. It used to be farms and plantations and war. Exactly. We don't do that anymore.
I know.
So there's like all the bonding that's happening at a human, just attachment level. And psychology, you know, is happening in your space. And there really aren't any other places in our culture anymore where you can find that.
Yep. And as I listen to more, even in your world, about like just movement and kinetic energy and just letting things release a little bit, I think about, well, we had a friend who partnered with me in the Empower and Thrive program, Shannon Hamaker, and she talks a lot about just sort of physically releasing things from your body, trauma, other things. And so coming in, I think it's, you know, a lot of people have to sit still and be pretty all day at work. And, you know, you got to keep it together all the time. You see this with children as well.
Yeah, we're not supposed to socially rage.
Yes. But, you know, for me, everybody always laughs at how I like yelp and throw and like I'm
make
very
noises.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, I feel great.
I feel better.
I don't know. So it's interesting in that regard as well, just to be able to kind of like let loose and use your physicality.
I love that. So like a socially acceptable catharsis, like I can release it here instead of on my coworkers or on my kids or on my partner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's really important. And you know, I have a little boy, and I just think about the traditional model currently and how
of like
little
learning?
Physical activity.
You're talking about learning?
And how little physical activity a lot of kids are getting, and just working with your hands and doing, you know, physical things is just so important, even like for their male testosterone and things like that. You have so many men with low testosterone now, and they're not being physical and lifting heavy things. Then that's one of the big reasons. So
Okay, so speaking of which, you're doing great. We're just transitioning, girl. Let's talk about strength training.
Yes.
Because I know that's a passion for men and women. We're already kind of alluding to it with the hormone production for men. That's huge. I talk to a lot of my guys about resistance training. You got to move, go push something, chop a tree, do something. Go wrestle a bear. Anyways, the guys were laughing. Anyways, but for real, let's talk about like, Emily, I'd love if you could educate the listeners on why you're such an advocate for strength training. If you want to like target men first and then women or all together, whatever works for your brain.
Sure.
Because I know that could be a whole podcast. But let's talk about why people really should consider strength training.
Yes. So it seems like it's trending, the understanding that America is not just overweight, but we are under muscled.
Oh,
That's actually I love that. A better way to think of it, I think. Okay. So just anecdotally, like working with people that begin to start moving weights. And like I said, I didn't touch a barbell till I was 31. My body weight stayed the same for a decade of CrossFit, but I went from a size 8 to a size 0 at one time. I'm not currently a size 0.
People don't understand that, right?
Yeah.
Like how can that happen?
Yes. And I did look jacked, but
you still look jacked? You still are jacked.
I was a jacked 0, but and so it was very interesting to see this, how strength training did transform.
You said under muscled. We were talking about
under muscled, and also just physical capability as well. You know, I mean, for me, it literally was going from, I used to ask my husband to move pots around when I was 30 years old on my porch, or get
like flower
help.
pots.
Yes, they were large, but or get help using moving the water cooler at my office. I remember I used to let guys do it for me. And then when I started at Get Built, I came in and I was like, wait a minute.
Hold on.
And I'm like,
second.
I'm going to clean that thing. And so I'd clean it.
Yes, I love
and
it.
then I loved going into the airport and realizing like, okay, it's under 50 pounds. I can clean and jerk 100. I can put my bag up here. No problem. Like just having that, it's empowering to know, you know, what you're capable of being able to do. And then thankfully it is really because of social media and so many advocates for skeletal muscle mass, you know, living independently long-term is a great reason to hold on to your skeletal muscle mass, your brain health, the science that they're releasing, the research that's showing association between dementia and Alzheimer's and that skeletal muscle mass number. So that's a really, really big, important one, I think, for the long haul. But really just quality of life, you know, being able to, I always tell people I want to be able to run through the airport with my luggage or carry my kids up a mountain if there's an apocalypse. I mean, just the ability to be able to go move your friends or, you know, take a long hike and the full end of the spectrum physically, just to be able to not be held back by that or have great sex life. You know?
Yes. So strength training and resistance training are huge for building skeletal muscle mass, and skeletal muscle mass are essential for long-term quality of life and longevity.
And brain health.
And brain health.
Yeah.
Okay. So y'all hear that? You need to go start lifting and moving heavy things ASAP.
I mean, they can go watch my pandemic videos of me squatting rocks. You don't have to have fancy equipment. You can do it.
I love it.
You can use your own body weight against you a lot.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be fancy at all.
Yeah.
I think that's, people get trapped into thinking they've got to start this program. But if they can just get into like doing 20 minutes a couple times a week of moving some loads. Yeah. It can be
moving a wheelbarrow of heavy thing. Yeah, for sure. Carrying buckets. I remember I did a medical missions trip a couple years ago in Belize, and there was a gentleman there who, we had like those 5-gallon Gatorade things we were trying to set up for the physicians before all the patients got there. And it was like half full. And he was like, you need to get one of the guys to carry that. And I was like, okay. And I like looked at him and like picked it up with one hand, and I was like, no, I don't. And he was like, he just wasn't used to that. So that, I just think it's kind of fun, like girl power, like when women especially start like building that muscle mass, and like the day to day becomes like, oh, I can do this. I can do this. Like quality of life, but also like a sense of confidence.
Absolutely.
Really translates.
Yes. That's something that is one of my favorite things in the gym, is just to see once people start realizing that they're capable. I mean, women will look at, you know, a small kettlebell like with very uneasy. And I'm like, your purse weighs more than that kettlebell. You got this. Yeah. So I think part of it is just the intimidation factor of the gym, weights, the way that they're shaped, they're made of iron, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But most women and, you know, most people are, you know, picking up their kids and things like that. Then they are moving weight. And that's, you know, the thing about kids is, you know, it is okay for kids to move a little weight too. They don't need to be maxing, but people are scared for them. I don't think that they need rollers for their backpacks though. They can do
rollers.
They can do
You're
it.
talking about like on the wheels rollers?
Yes.
Oh my word.
They need to be moving
God
their
bless
backpacks
America.
themselves.
We are in trouble. We are in trouble. All right. So Miss Emily, we have a few minutes left. Anything else you really want the listeners to hear as far as like health, wellness, what you would say to encourage them about exercise?
I always just think the people involving others is a good idea. So if that means that you can find a friend or hiring a coach or getting into a group fitness scenario, those are all going to be really great ways to, have that accountability and make it more social for you. So that would be kind of a tip. And then the walking, like I think, just starting walking, eating more whole foods. Those are kind of the biggies.
Whole foods.
Yes.
So find a buddy that can hold you accountable that will encourage you in your journey. You said walking, just start somewhere.
Move.
And whole foods.
Yes. I think the movement piece is kind of, like I said, the kicker, because usually it helps so much with mood. And so, and it does, once you experience that, if you just kind of commit to it and start small, start very small.
Okay.
And hopefully just pick it up from there. I sometimes I'm like, if you have to get a dog to get you out of the house, then do it.
I use my retriever all the time when I'm like, no, I just want to lay in bed. And with all
they're
the cold
so good for stress relief and everything too,
Yeah.
even though they can be a pain.
Yeah, he's like, let's go climb hills. It's 6 degrees. Yeah, so animals are great for that. Okay, y'all. So thank you for tuning in to episode 20 of the Healthy Sex Podcast with our amazing guest, Emily. Thank you, Emily, so much for being here
20th.
today. Yes, if people want to reach out to you, because you just said you work with all ages across the lifespan, childhood all the way into gerontology, which is phenomenal. I would love for people to hear how they can reach you. I'd love to share that. And I think people listening, if you've heard the word CrossFit, sometimes that can feel really intimidating, but I think it's important for the listeners to know it's about being functional, right? Like you said, push, pull, lifting, hinging. Like I just want to be able to stand up from my chair when I'm 90, if I get to live that long, or I want to be able to carry things. I want to be able to hold things and do it well, right? So I think it's not, everyone thinks of like the games, right? CrossFit Games athlete, like the top 0.1% of the world. Right. And CrossFit is so much more than that, right? Yes. It's like functional.
Yes.
Yeah.
It has a very diverse population and just a wonderful community overall. So
yeah,
I do think finding a boutique gym is probably the most optimal thing you could do.
If you have that luxury.
Because because you will get support and accountability for not just the fitness piece, but also hopefully nutrition and stress management as well, because we're usually, there's mindset in the classes. There's also like a little stress management sometimes included with your breath work or your cool downs and things like that. And then I think the mindset training comes in with even like strategies and just having those people around you. You're learning so much from others. So
and having the coaches there,
it is a lot of bang for your buck. You're getting therapy,
coaching, community.
Yes, it really is.
Your sex life is getting better. Exactly. You're feeling better about your body. Yes. Yep. Cool.
It is a lot of bang for your buck.
Miss, what? Okay, I was gonna be crass, but I'll save that because I love the Lord. Emily, how can people find you? What's the best way to reach you, ma'am?
They can almost always find me at my gym on the North Shore, CrossFit Brigade. And our website is simply CrossFitBrigade.com. Our Instagram is CrossFit Brigade. For our health coaching program, you could find us through there, but it's ignitehealthcoaching.com.
Okay.
And we have an Instagram, Ignite Health Chat. And then,
awesome.
Those are the best ways to find us.
Awesome. Y'all, she's seriously fantastic. As a former CrossFit coach and participant, personal trainer, and now training with you, it's been awesome to work with somebody.
I learned sorry.
I
learned so much from my members, and I have learned a tremendous amount from you as well already. Thanks. Just even like, I love to get your views on everything going on in there.
We chit-chat a lot. That's our community bonding. But I can tell you genuinely care about your people. Yeah. And I think because our bodies are such a vulnerable place, it just means a lot to be with somebody in a judgment-free zone where you feel cared about and you're genuinely encouraging about however people walk in.
Yes.
So thank you so much for what you do for our community.
Thank you for everything you do. I appreciate you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Congratulations on this 20th podcast. And happy 2025.
Thank you. Cheers, y'all.